What's up, guys? Today I'm interviewing Jordan Shapiro, the author of The New Childhood. We're going to talk about what it means to parent in the digital age. What's up, everyone? Today I'm here with the author Jordan Shapiro, The New Childhood. Jordan and I actually met in Beirut, Lebanon last year. We were both speaking at an event, and before the event, actually, it was kind of billed like we were going to be kind of against each other.
That's right. Yeah.
There was this anticipation of like, I'm the the video game addiction guy, and he's the like anti-video game addiction guy, the pro gaming guy. And then we got there and realized we actually had a lot of similar views or fairly similar views, and it was a really good experience, in my opinion.
I agree.
We had a good time, and now we're here in Philadelphia, so
yeah.
Welcome, Jordan Shapiro.
Thanks. It's great to be here. I'm glad to do this. This is fun.
And this is, his book is The New Childhood, which is, I guess you can kind of say a bit about like, what's the book, what's the kind of summary of it?
Well, I think, if I had to make it really simple, I would say it occurred to me at some point, I have two kids, and it occurred to me raising those two kids that they were living in a really different era than I was growing up, obviously, but also like so many of their formative experiences involve digital media, electronic media, and I thought, how is that going to change them? And I really spent a lot of time researching and looking at how childhood changed and how it's continuing to change. And I think that, again, this gets to one of the reasons why you and I got along, even though they wanted to polarize us, is because I looked around and people imagined me to be the like pro all video games are great guy, and really what I saw was kids who I was really worried about and going, we're not adequately understanding the experience of kids, which means grown-ups aren't allowing this to happen in a healthy, integrated way, and so we end up with a lot of kids who have very unhealthy relationships with electronic media, and I wanted to give a sort of picture of what that could look like, how that could look different, without necessarily it being, hey, the media is evil or anything, but that we really needed to consider this as parents, and we couldn't use old paradigms to deal with a new childhood.
And I think that's one of the like really substantial things that actually happened is this is the first era where parents need to actually be parenting in sort of a digital age.
Yeah.
And they're not really equipped for that.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the suggestions that you make to help them become more equipped?
Well, number one is making sure you understand it, right? Making sure you understand digital media. You're going to have to understand video games. You're going to have to understand social media. We can't continue as adults to be like, well, that's their stuff, right? Because it's no longer optional, right? Screen time is no longer optional, right? It's impossible. It's on some level to live your life without a smartphone and without some level of online engagement. And so that means we need to see this as a space that we're going to need to guide our kids through. We're going to need to teach them how to live in that space, how to manifest our ethical vision of the world in a different kind of space, in two spaces at once, both the the IRL, the in real life space, and the digital space. And to do that, we need to understand it. So tip one would be, to do that, you're going to need to get involved with your kids and go into the digital world with them. And one example I always think about with this is like when I had to teach them to cross the street, I held their hand and crossed the street with them, like, for years before I was like, now you're safe to do it by yourself. And I don't just, safe makes everyone go, oh, right, there's cyber bullies and predators. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about having the right attitude to know how to walk through the digital landscape in a way that is in line with your grown-up sensibilities and your grown-up morality and ethics and the things you care about and your values.
And I know for you, your kids, you went through a divorce and your kids started to use technology, and it was actually a really positive thing for them to be able to use that as an outlet to kind of transition during that time. It was a more predictable space for them.
Yeah.
How did you keep that from becoming an escape where they weren't going back and actually, also reliving in the real world, managing their stress, not just escaping forever and actually coming back? Like, how did you do that?
Well, I think it's a good point, right? Like, I don't want it to be an escape for them. That's number one. Like, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with kids who find things like video games, things like social media to have a sort of regimented, predictable patterns that make it easy for them to feel comfort and stable. That's not really bad, but if that's being used as an escape rather than, meditation is the same kind of thing, right? You want something predictable and stable, and you want to do this in a sort of regimented, I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes. That's a great thing, right? Well, that's okay, I think, also in a digital world, as long as it doesn't become, if you were meditating 24 hours a day, I'd be like, Ken, there's something wrong with you also, right? Even though we tend to think meditation good, right? If it's the escape rather than a way to center, that's a problem. And so what I did was actually played a lot of video games with my kids while we were going through the divorce, so that I could sort of model this. Okay, now's a great time for us to sort of chill out and play video games. Now we're going to do something else. And they kind of, when kids are really little, they want to be like their parents. They want to do things with their parents. So the more that I was modeling that, the more I was setting up healthy habits.
So I had one of my favorite stories I have of a parent who took this on. She was like, okay, I'm going to try to learn more about gaming. And so while her son was out, she logged on his account and started playing. And I think she was maybe playing League of Legends or some sort of game where, of course, she was very new. She's not a good player. And we all know as gamers, if you're playing and you're not a good player, you could say it could be fairly toxic, but like you could be insulted a lot. Yeah. And sure enough, this poor mom was just being trashed online for not being a good player, ruining the game. So do you suggest there's kind of like certain games they should start with playing, or how does a parent go from like, okay, my kid's playing League of Legends or Fortnite to I'm a parent, I'm now going to actually join them and do that together?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say, I would hope that parents start even earlier than that, when the kids are even younger. Now, I know that's not much comfort to the parents who are watching, who already have 13-year-olds, but first let me just make that point, then we'll go back to the 13 and the 14-year-olds, right? Because if you start with them when they're 4 and when they're 6, right, then it's the same. You can teach a language easily when you're 4 too, right? Like the more you can start to build those habits when kids want to mimic you, I think the better you can do that in a healthy way. I wasn't playing League of Legends. We weren't playing online games when I started. We were playing the original New Super Mario Brothers. It was a simple platformer. I was better at it than them. I'm not better at it, Fortnite, than them, right? They play Fortnite alone, but we've already sort of cemented this sort of habit. We've already, yes, it took years of me going, no, you have to turn it off and come to the dinner table when I say turn it off, but now they do. But the first time they said no, and the second time, and for 4 years they said no, and it was a fight. And then eventually they went, all right, this is just life, right? This is just like, we all know there's things we have to stop and do. So you had to build those habits. If you have a 13-year-old, no, I don't think you can just start with that. But what I've always said to parents who have these tween and teen kids is, you don't necessarily have to play. They hear me speak and they're like, oh, I don't even like video games. I think I don't have to play. But you could just sitting down with a kid and going, tell me about this game. What is that? Why are you trying to do that? Why are you trying to shoot that guy? What is that guy? Explain the story to me. One, it shows you're interested. It shows you care about what they care about. That's empowering to kids. That makes them realize that this is like something that is not just stupid, right? And also, it makes it less likely that it becomes an escape because they've always sort of got mom or dad's voice in their head watching with them, right? So now this is part of family life. This is not someplace you can go to get away from family life. That's a good thing in my opinion. And so I would recommend those conversations, those reflections, and it doesn't mean you have to like it. I have a lot of conversations with my kids where I go, what is this game you're playing? Why would you want to do that? This seems really dumb to me. Why? I don't get it. Please explain it to me. And there's a difference between disagreeing with your kid respectfully, where you're asking them to argue with you, and just going, this is stupid, leave me alone, don't talk about it. That's always a problem. But sitting there going, hey, I want to have a real critical discussion with you where I tell you what I don't like and you tell me what you like, that's a positive thing.
And I know you're a professor of philosophy, is that right?
Yeah.
And so obviously the comfortability you have around debate and sort of like logic is obviously a big part of it. So PewDiePie can be a bit controversial. And we were speaking earlier about how, so when I'm speaking in schools, one way I relate to students sometimes is saying like, who's a fan of PewDiePie and who's a fan of T-Series? And sometimes I'll mix it up. So at one school I said, all right, like any T-Series fans in the house, and they started booing me. And then I said PewDiePie and everyone erupted. And I could see all the teachers on the side were whispering to each other like, what is this PewDiePie T-Series thing? And they had no idea. And so PewDiePie, obviously, like there have been some controversies and, some maybe rightfully so in different regard. you speak to your kids about PewDiePie and actually have this as a conversation?
I absolutely do, and I heard them talking about PewDiePie and T-Series, and I said, "What are you talking about? Explain this to me." And then they tried to explain it to me, and I said, "Okay, show me some videos. Let me watch these videos with you." I watched the videos. By the way, a lot of the conversation is me going, "Wait, so you guys sit here every day and watch meme review, right? Like it's not there, barely even a review. It's like
it's almost a meme in itself.
It's always so, and I'm like, this is silly. And they go, no, it's funny. Elon Musk did it, and I'm like, all right, so big deal. Like who cares? But that all of that discussion is this one opportunity to show them I care, and I'll say it again. When I walk down the street on any day, whether it's a digital street or a real street, I got a little voice of my mother or my father on my shoulder going, are you sure you want to behave that way, right? And that's what I want to create for my kids. I want to make sure that in every part they're doing it, they at least have the voice of dad going, what's the right choice? What would dad do in this moment? I don't care whether they always do it. I know they won't always do what I say, but I want that voice to be there. That's a healthy thing. If we avoid talking to them about PewDiePie, if we avoid talking to them about video games, if we continue to say that social media is frivolous and dumb, all we're doing is telling them that's a space where the ethical voice of the parents doesn't need to be on the shoulder. And I think that's where we're going to get. I think that's why we have so many people who have unhealthy relationships with digital and electronic media, right? Because there isn't. There's no model. Their parents haven't modeled what that's supposed to look like, right? I mean, like when that first time a kid offered me a cigarette when I was like a preteen, like I had the voice of my mom going, "Don't ever smoke. It's so terrible. It's so evil." I won't say I didn't try it. I did try it, but I had that voice. I had that guilt the whole time while that was going on. Well, how do we create that for our kids if we're not engaging with them and we're not seeing the difference? It's not just digital online is so much bigger than just the device or one thing. There's so many different ways of being, and it's hard, and it's hard for parents, and it's hard for kids, and it's hard for everyone because it's so different, but we're going to have to do it.
And you were sharing earlier that, compared to, turning on the TV and seeing just Trump news and just politics and polarization and climate change, PewDiePie or just YouTube can be a greater sense of control and a place where they're being entertained. It's fun. And it makes a lot of sense. And, I think ultimately, like one of the core things I hope people get out of this is just building a better relationship where you have space to actually have these conversations without judgment. And, there might be disagreeing and that's fine, but actually having space for these conversations is really important. Now, I know from reading or from the book that one of the things that you're really big on is not just the focus on gaming or just the focus on the online world or screen time, but all the things around it. Yeah. So often the focus is on like, how many hours should we play? How many hours should be allowed? What limits should be there? And I understand the desire for that, but it's also within context of what else is happening. So the example you use a lot is that your kids have to read books every day, I believe.
Oh yeah, before bed.
Before bed.
Well, they could just go to sleep, but they can't be on a screen. It's reading time or sleeping time.
So what are the rules for you around screen time? You have, it's not so much an amount of hours, but it's all the other things they have to do.
Yeah, I think it's really important for parents to, yes, I have rules. My attitude has always been in my house, you have to read, you have to go outside, you have to play with real people. And as long as you're doing all of that, then if you also, if you can fit in 8 hours of video games after all those other things, I don't know how you found those hours in the day, but by all means, right? Because what am I worried about if you can maintain all the other things that matter to me?
Are devices, so at the end of the day, do you take devices or do you turn access off, or like how do you ensure they're not staying up all night?
I do. Well, my Wi-Fi does go off at 10 o'clock, I believe, and that started because my 13-year-old. I woke up and I heard him giggling, and I realized he was watching YouTube videos on his phone into the evening. So I decided to turn off the Wi-Fi. But what I didn't do is just go, I'm going to turn off the Wi-Fi and watch. You know what I did? I went like this. I went, what do you, the next day we're driving, I go, I heard you up in the middle of the night laughing. I was laughing. He's like, yeah, a little guilty, sheepish grin. And I said, let me ask you a question. What do you think is an appropriate time to be up till watching these videos? And he said 10 o'clock. And I said, okay, from now on the Wi-Fi goes off at 10 o'clock. So I actually put it on him. I made him make that decision. He couldn't argue about it. He couldn't go, that's not fair, because he defined what he thought was appropriate. And I happen to agree. Now, had he said there shouldn't be any, I would have been we need to have we have to have a discussion. Turned out we didn't have to do that. But it's really important to have that discussion so that you're empowering them, right? The last thing we want to turn this into is an evil temptation that has more power than the kid's ability to make his own or her own choices.
And actually including them in that and asking them, like, what do they think is fair? Yeah. And that at least gives you some space to start to have that conversation and hopefully come to similar conclusions, and ultimately you are the parent. And
by the way, and I'm sure you know from the many conversations we've had, I'm sure you can reflect on this. A lot of kids who are really unhealthy in their relationship to video games, they feel really bad about it while they're playing it. So actually, that conversation gives you an opportunity for you to say, hey, I see that you're not feeling good about what you're doing, and I can support you in that, rather than I can punish you for that. Rather, like, we can work together on this. That's what they need. My guess is they need other things. They need other things too. I mean, but I think it's way better to have that conversation, because these are, in most cases, even my son, who I don't think has any unhealthy relationship with his screen, if he's up too late watching, I know in the morning he feels terrible about that. It's not like he's like, I did the right thing.
I think we all do. We stay up too late, we wake up in the morning, we're like, oh, why did I do that?
If I binge watch Netflix, I mostly feel terrible if I binge watch. That doesn't mean I don't do it again, but there's usually months between each binge watching session, and it doesn't feel good. And we need the help. We don't need the.
Are you mindful of your technology use at home?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I hesitated for a second because I want to say I am absolutely mindful of my technology use for my own sake.
Okay, but not necessarily in the context of around your kids. You're not.
Yeah, because I already make the choices that I think are the right choices for an adult. And if I didn't think those are the right choices for the adult, I wouldn't be pushing them for a kid, right? Like I want my kid to grow up with the same sort of, I'm always sort of skeptical of the mindset that says, well, you need to do things in order to set an example for your kids. And I'm like, well, your example for your kids should be how you live all the time, right? So yes,
not just this random show for your kids. Right. I actually wear different clothes around my kids, but as soon as they leave, I like.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So yes, I'm mindful, but I'm mindful for myself. What do I think is healthy?
And so, how do you think about that just for yourself?
Well, my question is, when is the device? I think all these devices are great for connecting us to other people. I think they're great for they make a lot of business more efficient. They make making plans more efficient. They make kinds of connections I could never have. Like you and I live so far apart, but we're able to communicate when we want to because of these devices. But if that pulls me away from also being present in what's going on around me, that's a problem, right? So I generally, if I, and even when my kids were really little, in order to make this point across, they would go, well, can we play video games when our friends are over? And I would go, no, your friends are here, be with your friends, right? Like you can play online with your friends if you want to play online with your friends. And that's awesome that two kids in two different houses in two different cities can still have a social engagement online in the after school, but when they're in the same room, they should be looking each other in the face, because you can't do that when you're not in the same room. So to me, it's more like, what are the benefits of the real world and what are the benefits of the online, and how do you take advantage, how do you maximize both, right, all the time? It would be absurd if I was sitting here on my phone watching YouTube while you and I were having this conversation. That would be stupid. I don't get an opportunity to have a conversation with you every day.
Well, actually, in Asia, when I go there a lot, one of the differences I notice is that in America, if we were out for lunch and we were both kind of on our phones, and we wouldn't actually be having a conversation. Yeah. When I'm in a place like Thailand, they'll both be having lunch and they'll both be on their phones, but they'll also be having a conversation. It's the most bizarre experience I've ever seen. Like, because they're actually still having a conversation, but they're both staring at their phones still. I don't know how they do it.
Well, if they can do it, by all means.
It's also not. I don't believe it's really like fulfilling, connected sort of experience. Yeah. But yeah, just being mindful of if my phone's on me, I'm kind of thinking about it, whereas if it's not on me, I'm able to be a lot more present. So just thinking through sometimes like how you can set yourself up for success. Where can people get the book?
You can get it pretty much at anywhere, Amazon or their local bookseller. I mean, it's everywhere. Yeah.
And it gives parents a really good idea of how to understand the difference between, like, how do you keep it to be safe, which is ultimately what we're really trying to do. Like, yes, some people have a problem and we need to support them, but most people are fine, and really we can actually keep it from becoming a problem if we do just a couple basic things, really. So definitely check out The New Childhood by Jordan Shapiro. Any final thoughts?
I'll just say, if we all do our job right, I'm sorry to say this, there's no more job for you.
That's okay.
Right?
That's okay. I'd rather put myself out of a job than have to create more of me. So I don't think that, there's ever going to come a time in my lifetime, probably, maybe, that'll happen, but hopefully, we're able to move things forward.
Yeah, I know you do, and I feel the same way. I mean, this is our goal is happy, well-adjusted, good, ethically positive children who become good adults and good citizens, and they're going to have to learn how to do that with devices because they're not going anywhere, right? They're not; these screens are not. Maybe it was a mistake for humans to create digital technology, but too late. So now we got to figure out how to do it right. Like, it's here. We're not getting rid of it. I don't think. I mean,
I don't think so. All right, Jordan Shapiro, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks everybody.